This lure right here is called the Wacky Rig.
Psych! That's the
Neko Rig.
Well, if it looks like a Wacky Rig and can be fished like a Wacky Rig, how is this not a Wacky Rig? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna teach the Neko Rig in Masterclass format so that you can have all the confidence to tie one on and catch a bass for yourself on this technique. Because believe it or not, this, and this are also Neko Rigs. How can that be? Let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Well, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to Tyler's Real Fishing. Today's episode is brought to you by Evolution Fishing. They make the awesome tackle boxes and tackle bags you see in every single one of my videos, and they just launched the Ballistics line of tackle trays. And let me tell you, these things are absolutely amazing. They come with built-in rust inhibitor. They are basically waterproof, incredibly durable, and they have a steel hinge that goes all the way across the top. And let me tell you, in the industry of tackle boxes, that's not standard. And for all those features, you get the best price in the industry, and code TRF2025 saves you 20% on your entire Evolution Fishing order. Again, the Ballistics trays, their standard trays, or their awesome largemouth 3.0 bag that I had a hand in designing. So big thanks to Evolution for sponsoring my life. I will leave my favorite tackle boxes linked down in the video description. Now, for years, I called a weighted Wacky Rig a Neko Rig, and to be honest, that's not correct. And of course, while it doesn't hurt anybody to call a weighted Wacky Rig a Neko Rig, it's not technically correct. And if I'm gonna be an expert on these subjects, I've gotta have my words correct. So I'm gonna apologize for past videos where I call this a Neko Rig, because even though it looks like a Neko Rig and it can be fished in similar ways, they are not totally identical. Matter of fact, a Neko Rig doesn't even always have to consist of a soft plastic worm. All the plastics in my hand right here and all the ones on the side of the table can also be considered Neko Rigs, and I'm gonna walk you guys through all the different ways to rig a Neko Rig in this video. But I want to talk about first the main differences in kind of the standard Neko style, which is usually a small, skinny, straight tail worm, a Senko style worm. And so what are the differences between a Wacky worm and a Neko Rig? First, a Wacky Rig usually consists of a symmetrical straight tail worm, my two favorites being a Strike King Ocho and a Mach stick. Again, any kind of Senko style worm that's straight and symmetrical is great for a Wacky worm. And of course, you need some kind of a hook, usually a variation of a circle or a straight shank. This one here being my personal favorite for both Wacky and Neko. It is the VMC Redline weedless Wacky hook in either a size 1 or a size 2. I've really found myself though using the smaller of the two, the size 2, for almost all my Wacky and Neko applications, really regardless of whether it's a worm or, as I'm going to talk about here in a second, a variation of multiple different styles of creature baits. The size 2 VMC weedless Wacky is an amazing hook. And all you've got to do to complete the Wacky Rig is take your worm, take your hook, thread the hook right through the middle, and you're done. And the goal is to rig it so that there's even amounts of mass on either side of the hook. So that's not always in the center of the worm, although a totally symmetrical worm it should be, but you want it to fall in the water column with both sides flapping evenly as it falls so slowly down to the bottom, enticing, honestly, most of the bites as it's falling in the water column slowly. The plastic O-ring tool for Wacky rigging was brought in from the plumbing world to the fishing world as an additional accessory to make your Wacky worms last longer. That way when a fish bites it doesn't tear it off first try. So if you were to use one, all you do is insert your Senko style worm into the O-ring tool, slide an O-ring onto, like I said, the center of mass of the worm, and then thread your hook parallel, not perpendicular like I just showed you. And that right there is a Wacky Rig, but with a O-ring. A Neko Rig, on the other hand, is not intended to be fished in the exact same way, even though they look similar, because as a Wacky Rig falls extra slowly down to the bottom, and honestly, on a full-length cast, it takes a long time to properly retrieve a Wacky Rig back to you. As long as you're letting it sink down to the bottom after every time you lift it, that takes a dang long time. A Neko Rig, having a little bit of weight to it, does fall faster in the water column, therefore probably gets less bites as it's falling, but it does get more bites as you are hopping it across the bottom with the weight on one side, which I'm going to show you how to do here in a second. And the great thing, like I said, about the Neko is that not only does it not require the use of a worm, if you do use a worm, it doesn't have to be a total straight tail, even though my favorite Neko worms usually still are relatively straight symmetrical worms. You don't have to use a totally straight one. Again, because you're weighting one side, it doesn't have to fall totally symmetrically. This worm, and this worm are all designed to be Neko worms, like I said, even though they don't look the exact same as the Mach stick. So let's take one quick second to show you guys how to properly rig a Neko rigged worm. And of course, the first component to choose is a worm, and shortly following after that is the hook. And the one that I use for Neko rigs, the exact same as Wacky, is the size 1 or size 2 VMC Redline Wacky weedless hook. This thing, like I said, is stinking awesome, and I'll have all this tackle linked down in the video description for you guys to check out. So we've got the worm, we've got the hook, and next you need some kind of a hook attachment tool. Again, either an O-ring or my new favorite being the VMC crossover rings. They come in 3 different sizes, 4, 5, and 6 that I found are best for Neko worms. The 4 and 5 being best for thin worms like the Mach stick, and the 5 or 6 for the Ocho or standard Yamamoto size. Now you see here the difference in how tight size 5 and 6 bands are. 6 obviously has a little bit of give to it, but it does not squeeze the plastic as much, so it may not rip as easily. And once your crossover ring is on the worm, positioned anywhere from the center like a Wacky to slightly off-centered towards the head of the worm, you thread the hook on with the point facing towards the tail, and that is very crucial. I'll explain why in a second. And lastly, you'll need a nail weight. And let me tell you, a little dab will do ya on the nail weights. When you're trying to get a Neko to fall in the water column, you really don't need all that much weight at all. And I'm talking like, I hardly ever go above 1/16 of an ounce. I'm pretty sure this nail weight here is probably 1/16 of an ounce. This one here is 1/32. And anywhere from the 1/32 ounce to 3/32 is my favorite category for the worm Neko rigging. And with all the different types of Neko weights you have out there on Tackle Warehouse, there's really only 2 main styles of inserting the weight. You've got either tungsten or lead that screws in, and either tungsten or lead that pushes in. And to be honest, I don't know which one I like more for Elastec type materials. Let's say you're trying to Neko a Strike King Baby Z2. It's almost impossible to screw a weight into that. So of course the push one is better for that. But for normal style soft plastics, you gotta find which one works for you. With this setup, I just chose a tungsten one that pushes the weight all the way into the worm, and just like that, you have a fully rigged Neko setup, ready to either catch fish in the water column or hop across the bottom. Now, the reason why I stressed having the hook point facing towards the tail, facing up, and not facing down when you rig the worm is because of the way that you're retrieving it on the bottom, and that could lead to 2 potential problems if you have the hook facing down. The first of which being, it's just not nearly as weedless. So let's say that this O-ring tool here is a stick. If you're hopping your Neko rig and the hook is facing down like this, it is so much easier, even with, yes, a little bit of a weed guard on there, it's not all that strong. You're gonna get snagged a whole lot more. So just for the sake of weedlessness, have your hook point facing up. But when a bass bites this thing, I've probably caught 100 bass on this exact Neko setup right here. Almost every bass that I hook, when the hook is facing down, is in the tongue or the side of the mouth, and they are much more likely to throw the lure, and you're not gonna land those fish. When they bite down on it like this, the hook point gets them in the roof of the mouth, and you have a whole lot better hookup and landing ratio. And so like I said, as you're hopping it across the bottom, because the weight is in this side, you want the hook point to be facing up. But where things really get different for the Neko is in the different styles of soft plastics you can potentially Neko. It's not just a worm. This can be Neko'd, this can be Neko'd, this can be Neko'd, and even crazy plastics like this and this can be Neko'd. There are so many soft plastic options when it comes to potential Neko rigs, and you can't really say that about the Wacky rig, or although I guess you could try to weightless Wacky these things, I just don't think they would be as effective as they are with a small nail weight. Now let's separate the 2 different styles of Neko rigs into what I call finesse Nekos, your worms and your flukes, and then on the right side, I'm gonna call this your creature Nekos. So again, that'll reflect on the sides of the screen here. And I really think creature Nekos are a category that most people don't even think about when Neko rigging, but you can catch some giants rigging them just like I'm gonna show you. When rigged like this, creature baits as a Neko almost act as a finesse jig per se, or maybe a Ned rig type of presentation. When you hop them, the craws and tails flap and then rise back up as the Neko falls down and hits the bottom. Let me teach you though how I rig a creature Neko, because it's almost exactly the same as rigging the standard finesse Nekos, but with one additional component, and that is the G-Crack Neko hack. The Neko hack is a plastic insert for Neko rigging that comes in small, medium, and large, with I think medium and large honestly being the most useful. Small does come in handy for really tiny BFS style soft plastics, but if you're gonna rig the Neko on their standard, I think it's a 2.8 or 2.5 inch bellows gill, the small does work best for this. And as the helpful diagram on the back of the package shows, you poke the Neko hack through the bottom of your creature, locking it into the plastic with the T-shaped prongs. Then you'll find the little hole that pokes through the plastic plastic to slide your hook through, again, point facing up, and then you finish off by taking scissors and snipping off the long point that you poked through. Then, of course, take your nail weight of choice and insert it into the head of your plastic, just like you did with the worm. Now, I know I said I never throw weights for Neko rigging above 1/16 of an ounce. I misspoke when I said that. For creature Neko rigging, I will throw all the way up to 1/4 ounce, again, because the category these kind of fall in, again, if you're Texas rigging a Strike King Rage Bug, you would throw it on like a 1/4 ounce bullet weight, or maybe even an 1/8 ounce bullet weight. So anywhere from 16th to 1/4 is what I'd say you can throw on a creature Neko. Of course, though, you could go really finesse and stick with the super teeny tiny sizes. Now, as far as application goes for the creature Neko, they can catch fish as they're falling in the water column, just like a standard finesse Neko, like the Mach schooler or the Mach stick can. But for the most part, I'm working it like a Ned rig or a shaky head or a finesse jig, where I let it sink all the way down to the bottom, and then I'm kind of shaking it like this. And especially if you look at things like the tumbleweed or any kind of dice style bait, as you're hopping that thing across the bottom, it just has so much tentacle movement. Same thing with even a Strike King Scound Bug. The claws are just doing so much movement as you're hopping it, honestly, a lot more than if you were to Texas rig this. Now, as far as the rod reel and line needed for Neko rigging, you really just got to go with the one that you would normally throw with the size, bait, and weight you're using. So let's say I'm throwing a finesse Neko, this one being the Mach stick. I normally throw a weightless soft plastic or a small weighted shaky head, maybe a light minnow shaking combo. Those kind of things I throw on this exact rod and reel right here. This being my favorite, the Lew's Signature Series 610 medium extra fast. I've got that paired with my favorite spinning reel of all time, and honestly, I'm gonna die on the hill. This is the only spinning reel any freshwater angler ever needs, and that is the Lew's custom shallow spool, custom light shallow spool reel. I've got, I think it's 21 pound Seaguar PEX 8 braid, but it's a Japanese braid and it actually classifies down to like 15 pounds. So anywhere from 10 to 20 pound braid. And then I have a 12 pound Seaguar pounce leader. But for the creature Nekos, because again, like I said, I have slightly heavier sized weights and usually a slightly larger size profile bait, I like to throw these on a bait caster. So I have my favorite kind of small crankbait, finessey sort of application bait caster here being the LFS 6.8 medium fast rod, 12 pound straight fluorocarbon, and a Tournament Pro reel, one of my favorites for casting really light things. So again, whatever the weight and size lures I would normally throw on these combos, if it matches with the Neko, I'm gonna use that. All right, folks, hopefully at this point in this masterclass, you've gained some serious mental know-how and hopefully confidence in going out there, tying a Neko rig on for yourself and catching some bass on it. So if you did, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It helps keep this content my full-time job. I love doing this for a living, and I would love to have all of you guys along for the ride with me for as many years as I can do this. Now, I've got two more things I want to discuss in this masterclass, and those being the retrieval and the location, how and the where when it comes to the Neko rig. So let's head back on the water. And the retrieval on a Neko rig, honestly, is not that much different than any other soft plastic, especially soft plastic worms. And that is, you make a good long cast over your area, you let it sink down to the bottom, that's crucial, and then you slowly lift and hop it back to you during the entirety of the retrieve. Now, how high do you lift it off the bottom? That depends on what kind of snaggy stuff is in your pond or lake. If you're fishing a totally flat body of water, I'm talking like sand bottom, clay bottom, rock bottom, you can really get away with a very small rod tip retrieve. Matter of fact, let me get away from the camera here. I hope you can see how small of a hop I'm doing. I mean like 4 to 6 inches of the rod tip, and that just gets that weight sitting down there on the bottom, and it hops, like I mentioned, just like a shaky head. You can even at times just straight drag it across the bottom, but if you have a lot of lay down logs and especially aquatic vegetation, that kind of a retrieve is not only gonna get you snagged, it's not gonna let the bass see your lure clearly. And so what you gotta do, if you have more stuff in your body of water down there on the bottom composition is not clean, you've gotta lift it off the bottom almost like a traditional Texas rig, a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot off the bottom. That way, you're getting it out of that area and letting it fall back down in there. And oftentimes, if you're lifting it up, especially around aquatic vegetation, you're gonna feel it kind of grabbing some grass. And if you give it a quick snap, oftentimes that can clear the bait, letting it sink back down, and that snap oftentimes can trigger a bass to strike. And real quick on location with the Neko, where should you be throwing a Neko rig in your pond or lake? And the answer is wherever you feel comfortable enough throwing this kind of a rig, because it works fantastic around underwater grass, brush piles, rock piles, that kind of thing. But you just have to find out what type of risk you're comfortable making with casting this thing in there, because again, like I mentioned, it's not totally weedless. So now that I've taught the Neko rig as an instructor, I would feel like a fraud if I couldn't actually show you that I know what I'm talking about. And so I'm gonna show you my two favorite Neko Rig catches ever that I was a part of. One that I caught the fish, and the other I was the camera guy for Alton Jones Jr., one of the best pro fishermen on the planet, who I actually spent 5 years traveling the country with. But first, of course, we're gonna go over my favorite Neko Rig catch that took place relatively recently at Caddo Lake on the border of Texas and Louisiana, where I was fishing with this exact Neko Rig setup right here. And I started off this clip, you're gonna see, with an epic fail. I rigged this thing wrong and it led to losing a fish, but then I fixed my mistake and shortly after caught the biggest fish of the day. Yes, yes sir, yes sir. Oh, that felt good. That felt good. That was a nice thump. Didn't even feel the need to... Darn it. I was gonna say didn't even feel the need. Oh, well, my hook's upside down. No wonder. I hooked that dude in the tongue. My hook was literally facing towards his bottom lip. Gosh, Tyler, what are you doing? That is a surefire way to get a bad hookup ratio, is having the hook face the wrong way. Seems like they're in the crooks today between trees. Gosh, that was another one. Dude, they are in these trees. They are in these trees right here. Take your time, Tyler, slow down. Again though, in between two trees. Got him, got him, oh my gosh. Ooh, that feels big. That feels big. That feels big. That's big. That's big. That's big. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Holy cow. Holy cow. Holy cow. Holy cow. Do not go back in there. 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 5 pounder. No, he's barely hooked. He's barely hooked. Get in here. No. No, 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 no. Oh my gosh. Chunky Louisiana bass. Missed him the first time. Got him the second. My goodness, not a 5, but I mean, like, that is every bit of 4. What a healthy fish. And I'm glad I just re-rigged this from being upside down the wrong way to right side up the right way. Just a gorgeous bass. Look at that, he's got a yellow spot on his tail. That is stinking amazing. So as you can tell from that catch, a Neko Rig, even though it's not a totally weedless presentation, can work really well to catch bass around the super snaggy, shallow water cypress trees like they have at Caddo Lake. Now, that was my personal catch. I want to show you one of my favorite catches I ever captured on camera, and that was Alton Jones Jr., a pro angler on the Major League Fishing Tour at the Red Crest Championship a few years back in North Carolina. Now, in this event, Alton was catching big spotted bass on deep dock pilings, and he figured out that he could throw a Wacky Rig, but it just takes a little bit too long to sink to the depth he was fishing at where the big spotted bass were. And so if he fished a slightly weighted, I'm talking like 3/32 ounce weighted Neko Rig, he was able to get down to the fish faster and make more presentations. And that led to him catching the biggest bass of the event.
Tell you what, that is a bad spot for that to be. Shoot, for me anyway. Big one, big one. I got her wrapped up like a 4. Oh gosh, oh gosh. Huge spot, giant. I'm talking a giant, dude. Please stay pegged. I got a freaking giant at Red Crest, baby. That's like a 5-pound spot. She's freaking giant. That's the biggest spot I've ever caught. Are you kidding me? Look at that thing.
5 pounds, 7 ounces.
Dude, it's a 5'7" spot. Are you kidding me? Let's go. Woo! That's a chungus, baby.
So I hope this video gave you the confidence to go out there and catch a Neko Rig bass for yourself, or just gave you more information on this category as a whole. I've been throwing the Neko a lot more than I even thought I would this year, and I don't see that changing going into the future. So thanks to Evolution, as always, for sponsoring my entire life, honestly. I will leave my favorite ballistics tackle boxes and my largemouth 3.0 bag down in the video description if you're in the need for a tackle bag or tackle boxes. And again, code TRF2025, that's the code this year, saves you 20% on your order. And if you like the format of this video, the masterclass type thing, I will leave 2 clickable videos, whammy, up here in the corner. My name is Tyler. As always, it's a dang pleasure. Subscribe if you're new here and you like what we're all about, and we'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.